Hello students. Today we will discuss more continue with our last sessions, right? So designing the remote connectivity, right? In this we will see about this particular WAN and MAN architecture, right? Different edge components and branch and tail worker design as well in today's session, right? But before that we will see what we have covered in our last session, right? In last session also we have discussed about some of the remote connectivity design issues and areas, as well as some constraints over it, right? In that we have discussed how this particular WAN design can be take place, right? So what are the different steps under that particular WAN design, right? So for example, if you see planning and designing phase, we have discussed like we have discussed earlier, that PPDIOO model, right? So based on that also we need to design our WAN itself, right? So with respect to that, we have discussed planning and designing, how it can be done in particular WAN design, right? Then application, there are a different applications we are going to host it on this particular WAN, right? And what is the requirement with respect to that also we have discussed. Then technical requirement in terms of the what are the you offered the traffic and the bandwidth, right? So that also we have discussed. Then we have seen the WAN ownership, right? So how you need to do the design with respect to the cost effective to that particular organization, right? And for that, what are the different parameters are there, right? So that we have seen. Then how to optimize that particular bandwidth in this WAN design, right? So there are different strategies in which it can be possible to optimize this particular bandwidth, right? So that also we have discussed. Then how this particular queuing to improve the link utilization, right? So there are different queuing techniques, right, by which you can improve your link utilization in your particular enterprise network, right? And how to remove the congestion, right? How to avoid this particular congestion with respect to that particular network, right? So that also we have discussed. Okay, so that also we have discussed. Then we will see we already see in this particular different WAN technologies as well, right? So if you see with respect to your remote access, VPN, WAN backup, and your internet as a backup, right? So these all things we have already discussed in our last session, right? So today we will move forward and we will see how this particular in remote connectivity, right? How this particular WAN and MAN architecture can help, right? So there are with respect to this WAN and MAN, there are different constraints, different considerations also, right? So that we need to see what are the different considerations we need to think upon while designing this particular WAN and MAN network, right? So after that we will also see what are the different Cisco technologies with respect to your MAN and WAN, right? So we will list out some Cisco enterprise technologies which will be help you to design MAN and WAN network, right? And we will have some comparatively analysis with these particular technologies, right? So in this way it will be very easy for you to select whichever will be needed for your organization, right? So what is the purpose, what is the aim of your organization, and accordingly that you need to choose various technologies, right? So in order to design this particular remote connectivity is concerned, right? Then we will move towards this particular selecting enterprise edge components, right? So in this we have a different Cisco iOS packaging technologies, right? So we will see what are the different packaging technologies we have and how it will be interrelated with each other, right? And also we will see some of the Cisco routing platforms and their software families, right? So in which there are different series of the Cisco routers are available, right? And each of the Cisco routers having a different functionality, right? So we will see what are their series is there, what are their platform is there, hardware and all that things, and what are the different functionalities of each and every router, right? So all these things we will see with respect by using some comparative analysis of this particular Cisco router platforms, right? So it will be helpful to select which one is good for your organization, right? So that's why this will be needed. And then in the last point we will see the what is the difference between enterprise branch and enterprise teleworker, right? And how it will be designed, right? And what are the different sizes of this particular. If you see the enterprise branch, we have and the small branch offices, medium large offices, and large branch offices, right? So and depending upon the size of the branch offices, right, so design is also going to change, right? So we will see how it can be changed and what are the different parameters over here, right? And in the last one we will see what you mean by this particular teleworker concept is there, right? And how you are how you are going to use this particular enterprise teleworker design, right? So all these things we will discuss today, right? So today's session is the last session for this particular chapter or this particular module number 4, that is designing remote connectivity, right? So let's start with a thing, right? So we will see what are the different considerations you need to take care upon while designing this particular WAN and MAN architecture is concerned, right? So I have listed here some of the considerations, right? So for example, if you see, the first one is the support of your network growth, right? So if you see in any kind of the enterprise network, any kind of the enterprise architecture, right? So if you see, we must give some space, we must give some provision to expand your network for further or for future use or for further growth, right? So accordingly you need to choose a different technologies that that will be allows you for your network to grow with their businesses as well, right? So these particular WAN technologies or MAN technologies which will be needed for high support for your network growth, right? Because if it is also possible to add a new branches over your organization, it is also possible to add on some remote offices, right? So with minimal configuration of your whatever your existing infrastructure is, right? And for some small doing some small changes, if you are able to have such a technologies in your organization or in your campus, right? So with the lower support for this particular network growth, right? So it will be required significantly more time, right? Now obviously more time also and the cost also, right, to expand your network, right? So you need to think upon while architecting, while designing itself, so how your network is going to be in future, right? How your network growth would be there, right? So you need to think upon that, and accordingly you need to select your WAN and MAN technologies for designing part, right? So that you need to keep in mind, right? Then the second one, if you see the appropriate availability, right? So obviously you know that the availability is one of the major area for any kind of the reliable network, right? Because if you know that 24 by 7 by 365 days some of the critical application, right, which will be working on that particular enterprise network, that will be that must be available, right? So in order to available that, right, you need to choose such a connectivity technology, right, in order to provide the high availability, right? So you need to also provide the redundancies where no single point of failure will be exist in that particular network, right? If any what we can failure is there, then how you are going to dynamically recover from that particular network disruption in a short time period, right? That also you need to check, right? So all these things you need to take care with respect to this availability concern or consideration if you're talking about, right? And in that also you need to think upon the backup of your power supplies and redundancies and all that things, right? So which already we have discussed. Okay, then third consideration is operational expenses, right? So you know that whatever the WAN technologies we have studied in our previous sessions, right, it will be high cost, right, than what we can other technologies, right? So for example, if I need to give them frame relay or ATM, all these things we have already studied, right? So it having some higher cost, right, than the some, if you see, if you use this particular IPsec based VPN and all that things, right? So it will be a very low cost with respect to that frame relay or ATM, right? So you need to use this particular cheaper or low cost technologies, which will be giving you an high impact or high efficiency, high availability, in order to design this your van, right? So it will be reduce your cost also, right? So also, if you see with respect to your QoS, your network performance, right, or you can limit your support to some advanced technologies, right? For example, the voice and video, right? So now each and every WAN technology is comes up with your voice and video concept, right? Because of the time demand, right? So with respect to that also, it will be higher the cost, right? So in order to all these things, you need to check for the alternative technologies, right, which we discussed, right? And how these are the cheaper technologies which can be replaced with the traditional one, and how it can be used, how it can be secure, and how it can be having some low cost, right, in order to your enterprise campus network, right? So that you need to also think upon. Okay, so then the voice and the video support. So as already just now I have mentioned, voice and video support is some advanced thing which already the all WAN technologies is having currently, right? So if you see in this particular voice and video, right, so the QoS parameter will be very much important, right? So quality of service will be it will be efficiently must be there, right? It must enable some advanced application which will be required by voice and video over the network, right? So in that case it will be very useful. And for this particular whatever the WAN technology you are using, right, so for that the service provider which having some multi-service VPN and level of QoS which having very assured to support your voice and video traffic, right? So accordingly you need to choose all these things, right? And which it will be require a higher bandwidth, right, a broadband connection. So accordingly you need to choose your service provider, right? And you need to provide the connectivity to your all WAN technologies, right, in order to use this particular voice and video support, right? Then then the next one is your effort and equipment cost to migrate the private connectivity, right? So if you we already discussed the migration in between the enterprises from the for example the private connectivity to public or public to private, right, or some another connectivity, right? So it will be very much important to evaluate all the short term and the long term costs and the benefits for this particular migration, right? Because when you're thinking about the migration, right, you need to also check upon what is the cost when I'm going to migrate from one technology to another technology, right? What are the different benefits I'm going to get, right? And what is the cost for that, right? Because the cost is very crucial in terms of when we are talking about the migration, right? So because with the minimum investment, with the minimum equipments, time, and you can call it as an IT staffing, right? You need to check for the migration, right? So because obviously it will be increase your cost saving, increase your it will be lower your expenditure and increase your productivity, right? So in order to that, if the answer is yes, then only you are going to you can be migrate from one WAN technology to another WAN technology, right? Then the next one is your the network the segmentation support, right? So it means when supporting a single network, right, that is logically segmented, right? So one advantage for this network segmentation is that it will be reduces your expenditure with respect to your maintenance, if you're talking, if your network administration if you're talking, and if your network tariff, right, which you are going to give, right. So in order to this, it will if you compare with the physical network, right, so it will be very if you're using some logical segmentation, then it will be very reduced, right. So another advantage is also that it will be increase your security parameters, increase your isolate the departments or isolate different partners whoever accessing your enterprise network or your corporate network, right. So this particular network segmentation can be helped in that particular manner, right, and it will be also increase your security. For example, if you are going to do some VLAN part, if you are going to do some subnetting part, right, so obviously it will be isolating all these things, departments, your partners, and also it will be increase your security, right. And these are the some advantages over it, right. So all these things you need to keep in mind while you are going to design this particular enterprise edge WAN and MAN design considerations, right. Then we will see what are the different we can call as techniques or technologies or methodologies which can be used in this particular enterprise MAN and WAN architecture, right. So if you see here, the first one is your the private WAN, right. So private connectivity which will be giving you an advantage for your existing frame relay, ATM, or whatever the WAN technologies we already studied, right. So all these things you have some private connectivity, right. So obviously you if you're having some private connectivity, then you are going to add some or additional level of the security over it, right. So for example, if you are going to add some encryption techniques over there, for example the DES data digital encryption standard, triple DES, advanced AES, right, advanced encryption standard, if you are going to add, right. So obviously the security level of your WAN will be the better one, right. And you can add some if you're thinking about some growth expectations, right, then you can add some new branches, you can add some remote offices to all with respect to your personal or with respect to your private WAN itself, right, and you can grow with that line, right. So this is one private WAN technology if you are concerned. Then the second one is ISP services, right, to side and remote access, IPsec, VPN, right. So I already told you that whatever the frame relay or ATM we are going to use, right. So instead of that, if you are using some IPsec, VPN, all this remote services, right, and if you are going to add up some strong encryption techniques over it, right, for example DES, triple DES, AES, and all that things, right. So obviously it will be giving the increasing security to your own WAN design, right. And also if you are using this particular IPsec VPN, right, so which will be best suited for any data connectivity, and also it will be having some low cost, right, and obviously it will be providing you a better level of quality of service with and it also having some support of video and voice traffic, right. So whichever already we have discussed, right. So in this way it will be also very much useful technology, right, in with respect to your MAN and WAN design. So ISP service is one of them. Then the service provider MPLS and IPVPN, right. So if you use this particular network based IPVPN, right, which will be obviously the similar kind of the thing which we already discussed with this particular private WAN, right. So private connectivity so if you are giving, right, so you can add some different flexibility, scalability, then the QoS parameters over here, right. So if you're talking about this particular MPLS enabled, I'm talking about, right. So with respect to that, any branch, right, which can be having some network to any, that means a branch to branch connection if you're having, right, and you are going to use this particular thing to over this particular voice and video traffic, this particular QoS parameters, and whatever the need of that particular enterprise, right? Whenever we are talking about this with respect to the growth of the organization or enterprise, right? Then you also need to add some new branches, new remote offices over the years, right? So according to that also you can be think upon this particular technology, service provider MPLS and the IP VPN, right? So it will be a good solution to connect all these kind of the offices, branches, teleworkers, and remotely connect all these things, right? So MPLS and IP VPN you can use, which will be network based VPN, right? And the last one is the self-deployed MPLS, right? So self-deployed MPLS is nothing but your network segmentation, which will be just now we have talked about, right? So it will be technique which will be allowing enterprise to logically segment the network, right? And this, if you are going to segment all this kind of the network, right? So it will be obviously for the lower cost and the network equipment, it will be gives you an higher output, right? So self-deployed MPLS also you can be use one of the technology with respect to this particular enterprise edge WAN design if you concern, right? Then we will see, we will have some of the differentiation in between all these things, right? With respect to all these considerations we whatever we have talked about right now, right? So if you see in this particular table, right? So we have all these WAN technologies over here, right? Whatever we have discussed just now, and we have some considerations over here. So which will be able to you can if you see, for example, if you wanted to do some secure transformation or transportation, right? So in that, which one is the very good for your kind of the organization, right? So you can be select that particular technology for your WAN or MAN designing part, right? So depending upon whatever the considerations I have listed here, right? If you go with the one by one technologies, right? So you will understand that whichever is the good for your organization, which will be satisfy your aim and your goal of your organization, right? So depending upon that you need to select any one of it for your MAN or WAN designing part, right? So these things you need to take care, right, while designing this particular MAN and WAN designing. Okay, so we will see now what are the different what we can call how this particular edge component, right? So what are the different edge components we need to select over this particular WAN and MAN designing, right? So we will talk about here more specifically based on the Cisco's only, right? So so if you're talking about this particular iOS packaging, right? So what are the different we can call it services over there, and what are the different components, edge components will be used in each and every services, right? So that we will talk about here with respect to the Cisco's iOS packaging, right? So if you see in each and every component, if you see in this particular diagram also, right? So here the first one is the IP base, right? Then it will be supports your obviously the IP data, right? Then if you see the IP voices, right, then what it will be giving you the support for convergence voice and the data, right? So if you see voice over IP, voice over frame relay, and IP technologies with respect to this particular IP voice, right? Then the advanced security, if you see these are the some advanced security tools or some packages you can be used in this particular thing, right? So it will be having some layer 3 or sorry, it will be giving you some security and VPN, right? So security, IPsec, these are the some encryption algorithms over there, triple DS, then intrusion detection systems, some secure shell and all that things, right? Then you have some SP services system, right? So it will be service provider services, it will be having some MPLS, ATM, SSH and NetFlow, right? So which already we have studied in our previously sessions, right? And then next one is your enterprise base, right? So it will be giving you the layer 3 protocol, enterprise layer 3 protocols and IBM support over there, right? then the next is your these three particular we can call as a combination of this particular packages which we'll be having with respect to your new Cisco iOS software features, right? So for example, if you see the SP services, right, so it will be add some SP features including the MPLS, ATM, SSH and NetFlow, then IP voice packages and all that things, right? Then these particular advanced IP services which will be used for the advanced security packages, right? And last one is enterprise services, which will be obviously the advanced service provider services, right, to this particular enterprise based packages, and then it will be integrate the support of all routing protocols over here for in this particular enterprise services, right? So these are nothing but the bundle, or we can call it as an combine the packages of the Cisco iOS, right? So it will be depending upon which kind of the services you are going to use, right, and accordingly what are the different enterprise edge components you are going to use for that particular enterprise, right? So that will be there, right? So in from that we will have some segmentations over here, right? So if you so I'm going to do some logical segmentation over here with respect to this particular Cisco iOS packaging, right? So you know these are the Cisco IP iOS packaging, IP base, IP voice, advanced security and all that things, right? So we have already discussed it, right? So with respect to the data connectivity, voice over IP, voice over frame relay, then ATM, voice over ATM, MPLS, right? Then some IPX, that is in the inter network package exchange, then the security level firewall IDS, VPN, right, intelligent detection system, right, virtual private network, right? So depending upon that, how this particular iOS packaging technology will be support to these particular technologies, right, or these particular methodologies, right? So that we need to I have compared here, right? So you can easily check, right? So for which part you are going, you need to use which part, kind of the iOS packaging technologies, right? So for example, if you need to apply some security level parameters over your enterprise architecture, right, so you need to select a different kind of the Cisco iOS packaging, right? So in that you can select this particular advanced security, because if you see here, it will be enable this particular firewall IDS and VPN, right? You can also select this particular advanced IP services. In that also you are going to get this particular services. In this advanced enterprise services also you are going to get this particular services, right? So depending upon your organizational requirement, your enterprise requirement, you need to check, you need to select, you need to apply, right? So these are the some iOS packaging technologies logical segmentation I have given here, right? Then we will have some different functions of the Cisco routers, whatever I have mentioned in contents part as well, right? So if you see here, these are the nothing but some Cisco's router serial numbers over here, right? And what are the software which we are embedding this particular hardware, right, or which we are going to use in that particular on the top of the hardware, right? So these are the symbols with the version numbers over here. And what is the different functions for each and every series of this particular router, that are also I have mentioned here, right? So with the help of the functionalities, you can with the help of, you can check the latest versions of that particular iOS of that particular router, and depending upon that you can choose that particular router for your organization, right? So obviously for that you must know what are the different functionality of your that particular Cisco router platform is having, right? And for that this functionality will be given here, right? So you just go through this later on, right, and you try to identify which kind of the routers will be best suitable for your kind of the mini project, right? So while designing or while creating a topology for your mini project, also you can be take help of this particular Cisco routers platform and the software families over here, right? So depending upon that you can choose. Then this particular multi-layer switch platform is also having which having some of the features, right? So like that also I have compared all these things, right? So depending upon the versions of your iOS of that your router and functionalities, I have divided it into some of the routers, right? So you can also go through this, right? So these are the some functionality which already given, right? So you need to select depending upon the functionality and the iOS version your particular router for performing your kind of the work whatever it will be required for your organization, right? So this is with respect to your this particular enterprise edge components, right? Then we will see how this particular enterprise branch services or enterprise teleworker services will be used, right? So if you see in this particular what are the different enterprise branch services we are offering, or it will be having this particular WAN designing, right? So if you see here also in this particular services diagram, right? So here if you see there are some different branches which we are connected to this particular WAN network, right? So which is each and every branch is having a different kind of the services over here. If you see in this particular branch, right? So we have and some IP communication service over here. We have some different kind of the security service over here. We have some wireless service over here, right? And if you see in different part of the particular branch, right? So we have some data center related technologies, we have some WAN related technologies over here, right? Which will be directly connected to this particular WAN, right? Then this particular branch is also having some, they are using some Cisco Catalyst switches, they are providing some IP communication, they are also providing some security, some resiliency, right? Some and all these are branches which are connected to this particular WAN, right? So here also some WAN optimization technique they are using. This is IP communication, wireless, right? So these are nothing but a different branches is having different kind of the services, right? And each of the branch is connected to this particular WAN, right? So if you see here it will be giving you a different security. If you're talking about the security, then the firewall, VPN, IDS, right? It will be using some Cisco unified communication for your IP communication part, right? It will be using some manager express, Cisco unity express also for your other kind of the operationality, right? So these are the different kind of the services which will be provided by this particular branch services, right? Then we will check or we will see this particular branch services with respect to our Cisco Sono architecture, right? So obviously we already did that whatever the new architecture we are going to learn, right? We will compare that or we will add that with respect to our Cisco Sono architecture, right? And accordingly we have discussed all these things, right? So if you see all the layers are the same, right? The network infrastructure layer, integrated service layer, management, application services also there, right? But what are the services which we are provided by this particular branches, right? So that are the some different one, right? So for example, if you see in the network infrastructure layer, so or the internetworking component, if you see here, right? So which will be needed for the this particular branch network, right? So all these are listed over here, right? Then if you see this infrastructure manager, network infrastructure virtualization, so all these kind of the services which will be provided by this particular branch network, right? For example, if you're talking about the mobility service, security service, IP communication and identity services, right? So all these services with respect to your branch network only, right? And then with respect to application, you are going to provide the instance messaging will be there, instance unified messaging over there. You can be used this particular Cisco unified thing, right? Then video delivery, all this kind of thing with respect to your application oriented, right? So this will be, you can see in your branch architecture, right? So also if you're talking about the branch enterprise branch design, right? So you can be the requirements of your branch can be vary or can be depend upon the size of the branch offices, right? So if you wanted to if you wanted to design a branches of your enterprises, right? So you need to must have some of the questionnaires in your mind, right? For example, how many branch locations you need to support, right? Or how many existing devices you're going to use for each of that particular location, right? Or how many number of devices will be supported is limited by the physical number of ports which will be already available, right? Or what are the different high availability requirements or are there for each and every location, right? And what are the different security level you are going to apply on that particular branch designing, right? And how this particular local server farm can be managed, right? How this particular internal and external network can be managed, right? So how this particular network growth will be expected for each and every location, right? How this particular scalability will be required for each and every offices, right? All these kind of the question you must have in your mind, right, while designing these particular branch offices, right? So if you see in this particular small branch office designing, right? So obviously it will having just one inter ISR, it's this particular access router over here which will be providing some layer 2 switching over here, and some of the end devices are to be connected to this particular branch offices, right? For example, the end devices, phones, printers, and all these things are connected to this particular access router, right? And the layer 2 switching will be there over here from corporate headquarters to this particular access router, and from that you are going to have some different end devices that are connected to this particular small branch office is concerned, right? And if you talk about this particular medium branch offices, right? So in this medium branch offices, the topology will be some of the different one, right? So if you here if you see here some WAN edge devices we are going to use, right? So some of the two different access routers I am going to use here, right? And which will be connected to this particular access switches, and from this access switches we have an LAN connectivity to this particular all the end devices over here, right? So there are some different kind of the structure over here in medium branch offices designing, if you see, right? And if you are talking about the large branch offices, right? So obviously again there are some different services would be embedded in that particular thing, right? There are a different flow over here, right? So if you see again from the headquarters the WAN connection will be there, it will be connected to this particular WAN router, right? So and from WAN routers and before access layer there must be there are some security services over here, if you see, right? Some firewall functionality will be there, some VLAN you can be applied, right? On this particular distribution layer, right? Because you know already the aim or the functionality of this particular distribution layer is to you can be use some policy based requirement over here, right? You can apply some rules and regulations over here, and with the help of that you are going to use all this particular access layer switches, right? So whichever you are going to use, right? So this is again a new structural design for the large branch offices, right? So we have discussed this particular small branch office, medium large office, and large branch office, right? So in each and every design there are some differences, right? So which I have shown you, right? And then I have having some different comparisons of this particular teleworking options, right? But before that we must understand what I mean by the teleworker, right? So if you know this particular whatever the organization or whatever the enterprises is having, right? So they are always looking for your reducing the cost, improve the employee productivity, and they must retain their valued employees or valued customers also, right? So in order to provide all these kind of the goals, in order to fulfill all these kind of the goals, right, they now most of the industries or most of the enterprises which will be allowing employees to work from home, right, to provide the quality, function, performance, and security, whatever it may be, right. So for providing all these kind of the things, they will allow employees to work from the home, right. And by working from their residence, the employee also optimally manage their work, their schedules, right. It will be giving their the higher productivity, right. So this will be also giving their the job satisfaction, right, and all that kind of the things, right. So for that, so this is nothing but we can call it as a teleworker, right. So from remote locations, from remote access, they are going to use all the resources of the enterprises, right. And by using that, they can be fulfill their complete their work, right. So this is nothing but your this one, right. So if you see, I have in this particular diagram, right, so there are a two number of sections I have done. The first one is your occasional users, the second one is part-time or full-time or daily extenders, right. These are nothing but the we can call it as the branch of one or the occasional remote worker, right. So there are a differentiation in between the who are daily doing some kind of the remote work, or who are occasionally doing some kind of the remote work, right. And depending upon the applications, right, depending upon their services, right, we are just comparing all these number of users, right. So for example, here if you see email, then web-based application, so how you are going to give access to all this kind of the teleworkers, right. So therefore we are calling it as a branch of one architecture, right. So so you will see here easily, right. So with the help of that, you will understand how this particular teleworking options over there, right. So occasionally also you can do part-time, you can do full-time, you can do on the day basis and all that things, right. So this is one architecture of this particular branch of one, right. So if you see in this particular architecture, right, so in this architecture you will apply some security policies over here, right. So if you see here, I am going to use some VPN tunnel over here, right, with respect to your home and with respect to your corporate network, right. So in that you are going to by using some encrypted VPN tunnel, you are going to access all the kind of the resources which are available to your corporate network, right. And after that that you are going to use it from your home, right. So in this way, this particular communication will be take place in your teleworker, right. So you can also use this unmanaged VPN, right. So which will be from any kind of the broadband router, any kind of the access point you can use, right. And it will be also giving you some features integration, some QoS, right. It will be also giving some delivery of your voice and video, multimedia, traditional data to all the kind of the end users, right. And it obviously all these kind you are going to access it from remotely, right. So it will be, therefore it will be called as your teleworkers, right. So in this way, this particular communication will be take place, right. So this is nothing but for your teleworker architecture, right. So what we have discussed today is, right, so we have seen first of all today the enterprise age man and van architecture, right. So there are different considerations over this particular man and van. Then there are different technologies over here, so we have also compared all these particular technologies, right. Then we have some enterprise age components over here, right. We have logical segment them, and we are also compare with their routing functionalities and there's versions of iOS and all that things, right. Also we have discussed enterprise age branch and teleworker design, so small branch office, medium branch office, large branch office, right. And lastly we have also discussed how this particular teleworker design branch of one can be take place, how you are going to access your network resources from your enterprise from to the from your home home, right, as a work from home structure, right. So this is all about your designing remote connectivity chapter, right. So we have completed over here the model number 4, right. So from next lecture we are going to start with our model number 5, and it will be very very useful in terms of your examination point of view also, and in terms of your topology, whatever you are going to create in your mini project, right, in that point of view also, right. So all the routing protocols and all we are going to study in that particular next chapter. Okay, so thank you for joining. We will stop today. Okay, so there will be no test today. Thank you.